Isn't the general preparation or base phase essentially the same thing? No, they're not. The general preparation was to fix up the injury problems, deal with any weaknesses, and basically get the body ready and more robust to be able to handle the marathon training. The marathon base phase goes beyond that. Now it's time to set the fitness base that will allow me to handle and adapt to the harder and more specific marathon training. But how do we do that? Well, I'm glad you asked. There's 4 points. Number 1, we build up the endurance so we can cover the distance. 2, we raise the VO2 max as high as possible. Number 3, we develop a higher than needed strength base. Number 4, we increase our ability to absorb a high workload. What's just as important as these 4 points are, is what's missing. But we'll cover that after we go into more detail in these 4 points. 42.195 kilometres is a long way, and it doesn't matter how fast you are if you can't cover the distance. I'll be developing my basic endurance during this base phase, and the main way I'm doing that is with the long run, which will progress from 2.5 hours out to 3 hours. Also, I'll be supported by some general volume on the easy runs. For these runs, I'll be keeping the intensity below the first lactate threshold. For me, that's about 80% of the heart rate max. The focus is more on being able to run for the time that I'll be racing for, rather than being too concerned about pace. Those concerns come later. The higher your VO2 max, the higher the potential for all your other endurance markers. Base training is the opportunity to get this as high as possible before I start on the more specific marathon training. The staple session to raise the VO2 max are 3-minute intervals. The pace will be at the minimum velocity or speed that it takes to reach my VO2 max, and maintain that for 3 minutes, take 3 minutes recovery, and keep repeating until I can't maintain that pace anymore. Each week I'll be incorporating some hill repeats as well, and they will play a role to at least support, if not further develop, my VO2 max as well. Getting older means it's getting harder to develop and maintain strength. The extra run volume also adds to this difficulty. So I'll be putting a heavy focus on strength. So each week I'll split it across 3 sessions. The first is core strength and some plyometrics. The second is developing my maximal strength. And number 3 is overall strength plus extension, or adding some volume to the strength training. Now, one of the main focuses of this is to help keep the injuries at bay, make me more robust, and hopefully prevent any future injuries. By developing a higher strength base early, it means that the inevitable strength losses that come through the last part of marathon training and the marathon itself, they won't set me as far back as if I didn't develop the strength base to such a high level. In the end, the strength training is about injury prevention and lifelong fitness. It's not just running. Now, this training should feel generally difficult overall. I shouldn't be feeling as fresh as I was during the general preparation. A lot of these sessions I'll be carrying some accumulated fatigue, and the main purpose of this is to develop the ability to handle higher workloads. There's a time to be fresh for your key sessions, but the base phase isn't that. Now, it's not about running myself into the ground, but it's the ability to handle and be able to perform the key sessions with some fatigue without being fully rested. Now, to achieve this, my main approach is to increase the density of training. And what that means is I'm moving the sessions closer together. So in the general preparation, I would have 2 or 3 easy days in between my key runs. Now I'm having 1 or 2 days in between those. No doubt this base training will feel more of a grind than the general preparation did. But importantly, to get this right, a big key to it is not absolutely smashing yourself on the key runs. There should be something left in the tank so that you can back it up the next day and the day after that. And this will take discipline. because writing yourself off with an extra hard training session means you can't maintain that density of training, and as a result, you won't develop the base workload from which to handle the extra hard sessions that are to come later. So what is missing from the base training? It's marathon pace work and training around the second lactate threshold, often termed the anaerobic threshold. But isn't it important to get used to running at marathon pace? And for the marathon, isn't it important to have a high anaerobic threshold or second lactate threshold? Yes to both, but right now we need patience. Remember, we can't focus on everything at once. But no training effect occurs in isolation. So building the base endurance, a bigger endurance base, will improve our ability to maintain the marathon pace, especially after we add some specific work closer to race day. Increasing your VO2 max will also raise the potential for your second lactate threshold and will probably even raise it as well. Now, the further out from race day we are, and we're still a long way at the moment, we're still 22 weeks away, the less specific the training paces are. So the endurance work is lower than marathon pace, and the fast work is quite a fair bit faster than marathon race pace. There's time to get specific, there's time to narrow it down and really hone in those paces, but that's closer to race day. Let's make some sense of this training. Let's look at how it gets laid out over a typical training week. And for me, I'm lucky enough that for the first 3 weeks, I'm going to follow a more traditional 7-day format. Now, being able to follow a 7-day week is a little bit out of the ordinary for me. So after these first 3 weeks, I'll end up having to modify it a bit to fit around my work roster. And that's the joys of shift work. Monday is the long run, somewhere between 2 hours 30 and 3 hours. I'll be starting at the 2.5 hour mark and adding 5 minutes each week. And this phase will go for 7 weeks. Later that day, I'll be doing a strength training session, which will be the core and plyo work. Tuesday will be an easy run and some prehab work. Wednesday will be the hill repeats. Later in the day will be some more strength work, and I'll be focusing on increasing the maximal strength. Thursday, same as Tuesday, an easy run followed by some prehab work. Friday is the VO2 max intervals, and then afterwards I'll be following that up with some strength training. Saturday, another easy run and some prehab work. Sunday at this stage is a day off, complete day off training. I'll class it as a rest day. 2 key reasons for this rest day. 1, it fits in for my life and just makes it easier to maintain everything else and keep my training on board. 2, my body actually needs it. Now that I'm in my 40s, I'm finding that if I'm going to push the envelope in terms of raising my workload, I need at least 1 day of contrast where I really deload the body. And rather than accumulating more and more and more fatigue, I have that block where I feel absolutely stuffed by the end of it. I have a full day recovery and I'm feeling pretty fresh to start it all over again and build on what I did the previous week. I could go into a lot more detail. In fact, each session in this training week deserves its own video. And if you want more details, let me know. I'll be happy to explain further. I'm Jason Montfort. This is Running Alive. We're working on the Marathon Project 2021. Keep on running.